Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. Of course, many people go back to college or graduate school mainly for the piece of paper, but it's an awful lot of money and time just for a piece of imitation sheepskin. You might as well extract as much useful learning as you can, right? Well, this little talk hopefully should help you do that. Many such talks are over optimistic, and articles and books, about how much students are willing to actually do. This little talk, like the others in this Doable series, the most recent maybe half dozen of my most YouTube videos and Psychology Today articles, focuses on what most people will actually do, most students. First, I want to start with talking about getting motivated. Many people are scared to go back to school. Here are my honest responses to common fears. They may worry, can I learn well enough? Well, maybe and maybe not. Check out various courses, and I'll talk about how to do that in a minute, by looking at syllabi, required readings, introductory videos, maybe even take the first class. What I mean by, in a moment, I'll tell you sources of classes that are just great. But if you conclude after doing that review that for now school isn't doable, usually tuition is refundable. So at the risk of sounding like your mother, if you don't try, you'll likely get even more afraid. Another fear that people have about going back to school is, how will I feel being in a class of Gen Zers? Well, you may feel a little weird, but as long as you don't try to dress or act like a teeny bopper, and you avoid dominating discussion as some older students do, you're going to be okay. You may even be reinvigorated by Gen Z's energy and new perspectives. Besides, many classes today have many older students. Another fear is that about the time and money. You may already be pretty maxed out. Again, it's worth a low-risk effort. After some curating and maybe trying out one class session, if it's feeling wrong, you've lost very little. Taking a low-risk action like that is the quintessential doable. Now let's turn to choosing what kind of an educational course or program you want. My first go-to option for most of my clients is the most doable one, the one-shot webinar or other class that meets just once. Why? Because a one-shot often contains an expert's distilled wisdom. The more time an instructor has, the more likely there's padding. You see, all instructors have a point of diminishing returns. If we have an hour, we can cram it pretty darn full of valuable stuff. But as time goes on, our value per hour, and thus per dollar, tends to diminish. There are many thousands of one-shots and longer courses available on LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, Coursera, and for technology, Udacity. As a result, you can be really picky. Start with a keyword search at one or more of those sites, followed by student reviews, syllabi, and often there is an instructor's introductory video. Online courses tend to be far less costly than traditional university education, and you can search from all over the world, which is just amazing, instead of being stuck with the professor or two professors who happen to be teaching the desired course in one local institution. And thousands of those courses are not only low cost, they're free or under $50. Boy, do I wish those were around when I was younger. I might well have dropped out of high school, really. I mean, I love learning, but I love it much more so when I get to pick what I learn and from whom I learn it. I'm sure I'd have been excited to draw from a world of possibilities. An under-the-radar and maybe underrated one-shot is the PreConference Workshop at your professional association's annual meeting, for example, American Psychological Association. Those pre-conference workshops can be golden because they're usually taught by master practitioners who are selected by a committee of expert practitioners. Say a word about boot camps. Originally, they were quick ways to learn computer coding, but today, boot camps are now available in many fields. For example, in that I'm writing this article for Psychology Today, there's, for example, a business boot camp for therapists. There's one for mediators. There's one in behavioral economics, and Duke offers a 2-week boot camp in neuroscience. Of course, a one-shot or boot camp is rarely going to take you from ground zero to super qualified, but alongside on-the-job training, those can yield a lot of benefit per hour and dollar. They're doable. Of course, it's harder to sell an employer that even an assemblage of one-shots is better than a degree, especially a degree from a design or label university. But it's often worth trying that first. For example, imagine you're an employer who's considering 2 job applicants. One has a master's from Midland State University. The other has taken a few one-shots. But the latter wrote an application letter that explains in specific how much of practical rather than theoretical value that he or she learned. Mightn't you interview that candidate? And if you're that candidate, by avoiding the degree program, you will have saved years and a fortune. Now let's turn to certificate and degree programs. Most people choosing those opt for the highest ranked one they can get into. The problem with that is that most rankings are based mainly on reputation for research productivity, which may be inversely correlated with the institution's course's practicality. I like to prioritize steak over sizzle. So unless I was admitted to a super designer label school like Harvard, Yale, or Stanford, or unless my interest was mainly theory or research, I would opt for a more teaching-centric school. And to ensure that my education would be relevant and interesting, at universities in my target locations, I would review the required and elective courses. How motivated would I be to learn that stuff? Additionally, and honestly, fewer than half of my clients have found this doable, review professors' bios at target institutions and pick one at each institution that seems compatible with you. Email them or show up at their office hours with a question or three to help determine if the program's a good fit and, if admitted, whether that professor might be an appropriate advisor. Now I want to turn to getting in. If you've got it in, that's usually only an issue when you're talking about getting into a degree program, usually, at a prestigious school. Some of them are virtually open admission, although they don't like to admit it. If you have to take the GRE or other standardized admission test, a doable is to spend a few hours with a top-rated prep book, not an expensive course. One of those books, for example, is Kaplan's. It's only $14. It's called GRE 2020. Another doable is to use your application essay not as a sales tool, but as a growth experience. Think about why graduate school and maybe that particular program is a logical next step in your professional and personal development, and then, without bragging, tell that story. Now let's turn to when you're already in the program or in a class. If you're planning on taking more than one course, over-register. It's an easy yet powerful doable. Register for one more class than you plan on taking. Even if you've carefully curated, that first class may reveal an instructor who's too hard or too easy, content that's not interesting, or classmates who drive you nuts. Then just drop the worst course. That's an easy way to improve and perhaps ease your learning experience. Sit in the front, or if it's a circle, where the instructor most often looks. Otherwise, it can simply be too tempting to space out. Offer just one tactful question or comment per hour. Questions get you feedback on what you're curious about and can impress the professor. It's an easy way to up your grade. But speak up more than that and you may appear piggy or a show-off. Besides, all that questioning and commenting is harder, and we're focusing here on doables. Take a modest amount of notes. Too many and you'll be buried when it comes time to study. Just write what you sense or that the instructor actually says is important that you don't already know. Now I want to turn to out of class. Maybe don't do everything that's assigned. Some instructors seem to be in a contest with fellow professors to see who can be most rigorous, that is, who can assign the most or the most difficult readings and assignments. I interviewed a group of top students at UC Berkeley, and they agreed that even they didn't try to do all the reading. They picked what was most interesting to them, and yes, what they thought would be on the test. They skimmed a lot and closely read only the paragraphs they thought really important. Adapt assignments. You don't want your term paper or class project, let alone your capstone project or paper, to be just an exercise to get you done. If the assigned topic doesn't interest you or seems unnecessarily difficult, propose an alternate to the professor, maybe something more relevant to your career, something you might show your boss or include with your job applications. Many instructors get bored reading a class full of papers on the same topic. As long as you make the case that you'll benefit more from an alternate assignment, you have a good chance of getting a yes. And voila, that demon of an assignment has now become a doable. Everyone lauds the concept of lifelong learning, but there is often a grand canyon between the vision and the reality. I'm hoping that this little talk's doables will help you close the gap. I thank you for watching. I'm Marty Nemko. I welcome your thumbs up and accept your thumbs down, your comments. You're hitting the share button and share on your social media, and or you're subscribing. And in any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.